Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'm discussing my thoughts on the anime series 91 Days, which just as of the time of this recording wrapped with its final episode. And damn, this was a powerful, powerhouse anime series. This is a series that pulled no punches and time again left me gaping, asking, wow, they really went there? Holy crap. Very much a Prohibition era mafia sort of, story, a story about revenge, the seeking of vengeance for the main character, for the lives lost of his family just under a decade ago when he was still a child, before receiving a letter that brings him back to town, the town of Lawless, to try to infiltrate the mafioso family, the Venetti family, this syndicate that was solely responsible for the deaths of his father, his mother, and his little brother, and he just barely escaped of his own accord those many years ago. And, in the earliest going of this series, I remember comparing it loosely to feeling very much the vibes I was getting was a combination of The Godfather meets Road to Perdition. If you have ever seen those films or read the novel, The Godfather is based on, or the graphic novel Road to Perdition is based on, the look, the feel, the vibes, all the way through the course of the series up until even the final episode, the final scenes, are very much mirrored in those kinds of mafioso story aesthetics. And just, it astounded me for that. And I lamented many a time through the course of it, through many of the episodes, that I had no means of doing like live reactions, because so many of the events as they unfolded, the murders, the character turns and things of that sort, would just shock me time and again. And I almost wish I had been able to capture that initial reaction, seeing those things, rather than coming on after every episode and wanting to talk about it like that, in a review format. I thought it would be much more befitting, since I don't have the live reaction, setup, to come on after the fact and talk about the series in a sort of overview format. And that's very much what this video is about. We're following the main character, Angelo Lagusa, aka Avilio. He's much more familiar as Avilio. Here is a cat who, as I say, he receives a letter telling him, effectively who is responsible for his family's deaths in his youth, and he comes back to town. He reconnects with lifetime, childhood chum, Corteo, who this cat, is basically making the hooch. He's making this bootleg liquor, very much on the black market. Are they going to try to sell it? This is the first stepping stones into infiltrating the Venetti family and trying to get chummy with the chief's son, Nero, who is one of the main characters. And this is Avilio's sort of plan of action. How can I gain this guy's confidence? How can I get myself, confined within this family and really directly go after the people responsible, the people who held the guns and fired them at my family? And this letter points the way. It is the map, the drawing board for Avilio's entire sort of misadventure, for lack of a better term, getting back involved with the people who took his family's lives. And, he crosses so many lines in that. Very much one of the earliest sort of things he does is try to pit these opposing gangland factions against each other. There is the Galatia, sort of syndicate. There's the Venetti syndicate. There's the Orco, sort of syndicate and all this kind of stuff. And he realizes in the earliest going, one of the best ways to really upset things, to throw a wrench in the works, is to try to upset this sort of peacetime that is just barely existing between all these mafia syndicates, by killing this guy and having it look like this guy killed that guy, and misdirections and twists and turns, and trying to effectively ingratiate himself upon Nero's better graces by giving them this alcohol, by promising them all the money they can make. They can make a fortune off this stuff, and he's basically successful in that early sort of vantage of getting inside, of seeing what the outlook is, who are the people involved in this family I need to go after and make up for the lives lost of my family. And those twists and turns, I'm not going to hit every sort of pinpoint along the course of the story, but just a few that completely threw me for a loop. You have this psycho, sycophant, Fango, who, for all intents and purposes, he's part of a rival syndicate. And this is somebody that, for a little while there, it almost looks like Avilio is going to try to become the compatriot of, and there's a lot of sort of fighting amongst Avilio and Corteo, his, lifelong chum, because Corteo is very much sort of the innocent bystander in this. Avilio very much drags him into this whole trying to infiltrate the mafia family, trying to get very close, in numbers to the people who took his family's lives and everything like that. And Corteo is just being led by his drawers, for all intents and purposes, just because he's the cat with the recipe for the alcohol, for the bootleg hooch. And it's tragic because at some point, Corteo just is brought to the breaking point. He's sick of this, sneaking around, these murders that are happening by Avilio's hand to set up other people and to misdirect them. And he has a nervous breakdown that leads him to seek out confidence with Fango to take out Nero, the Veneti's chief son, which Avilio, again, is very much trying to get close to and gain the confidence of. And Fango eventually turns on him because this cat is again, sycophantic psycho. He's very much a sadist. He loves being beaten and whipped and bloodied. He loves torturing people and murdering them slowly and making sure they feel the searing pain of whatever death he's chosen for them, to the point that he basically turns around. You think he's going to kill Corteo at one point, after Corteo has basically burned his bridges and made an enemy of the Venetis and even his best friend Avilio. He's, Fango's basically like, well, that's it. We don't need you. Now that we have the recipe for the hooch, you're gone. You're unnecessary. And in fact, we're going to go ahead and tell the Venetis. We're going to tell Nero personally that you sold him out. And this is what really pushes him over the edge. And this was one of the tantamount moments that blew my ever-loving mind, because Corteo, brought to the edge, suddenly turns around and bludgeons Fango to death. Fango, who I was very much feeling, he's very much an antagonist in the story. I thought he was going to make it till the end of the series. I thought he was going to be a chief sort of antagonist that Avilio would have to go up against. I thought, if anyone, Avilio would be the one to take Fango's life. But in fact, was it Corteo? And it just, again, astounded the hell out of me. My mouth was agape by the end of that episode, and it actually prompted me. It was the first post I made on Facebook talking about the series. I could not believe what I had just witnessed. And there are just so many moments like that. There's a point where Avilio has led Nero to have to kill his own younger brother because of that infighting, because of the sort of war horses going to bat for each other in these opposing gangland factions in these syndicates. They've managed to make this infighting in the Venetti family, come to fruition, where it's brother against brother. Nero's brother Frate, he very much wants Nero dead. He wants to, make himself, ingratiate himself in a similar fashion to what Avilio is doing to the Venetti family. Frate wants to ingratiate himself on the opposition, the opposing factions, and try to make, again, a sort of pseudo-peacetime between these gangland syndicates. And in order to do that, he has to kill Nero. But the way Avilio manages to manipulate circumstances, we find Nero killing his own younger brother. And it's very much speaking to the template of Avilio's plan to not only undermine what the Venetti family has built up, to see their house of cards come crumbling down from within, but it's also a matter of making Nero and making Nero's father, who was the gunman, the chief gunman who killed Avilio's family, make them feel that same sense of loss, that same sense of pain, that living anguish of losing those you love the most, the nearest and dearest to your very heart. And he succeeds. I mean, when, you have that confrontation between Nero and his younger brother Frate, Avilio has taken the bullets out of Frate's gun, and he doesn't know that, and he grabs the weapon and tries to kill Nero, but Nero ends up killing him instead. And this is really the turning point, the tipping point, where all bets are off. the Venettis are going down. They will be gone by the wayside by the end of the series. And again, it's just freaking astounding to me. Now, because of Corteo's own, sort of blasphemy in turning on the Venettis, now this has cast suspicion on Avilio because they are so closely knit. They are lifelong chums. And the only recourse, for Avilio at this point is to try to regain their confidence by answering to that, by doing something about Corteo himself. And in the midst of this, basically, Avilio finally finds out who sent him the letter that got him back to this town of Lawless in the first place, that told him you can actually take these people down who killed your family, and pointed them out directly. This guy Gonzo, who, for all intents and purposes, he's got his own machinations. He's another one of these Venetti family warhorses who he wants power. A lot of this stuff, a lot of these misdirections and turns of character are all about seeking power and trying to get the opposition, trying to get the people in your way out of your way, and manipulating others to do the dirty work for you so you come out on top, flags ablazing. And that's very much what this Gonzo guy is after. He's trying to manipulate Avilio into seeking his revenge, into taking out the Venetti family one by one, and all the warhorses that were responsible for the deaths of his father, mother, and brother, so that Gonzo himself can basically claim ultimate power. And in the doing so of this, Gonzo has called Corteo back. Avilio has tried to sneak Corteo away because they were so closely knit, because they were very much brothers of a sort. And he had succeeded for a time, but because Gonzo came a call and said, Corteo, come back, Avilio has this, suspicious eye on him now. They don't trust him. He's in trouble. Corteo, being the loyal servant, the loyal best friend, the loyal brother, comes back and forces, effectively, Avilio to have to be solely responsible for what happens next. And so another very astounding, shocking twist in the story is Avilio kills Corteo, his brother, his only surviving sort of sense of family. They may not be related by blood, but they grew up together, and Corteo was the open arms who took Avilio in when his family had perished those so many years ago. And you can see that this very much is the tipping point for Avilio. He has been successful in taking out so many of the people responsible and taking out surrounding characters within these mafia syndicates, posing these syndicates against each other. But this is the point of no return for his own well-being, his own sort of, psychosis, where we see him pushed over the edge because he never, for one, expected to have to murder his best friend, whom he was solely responsible for even getting him involved in any of this. And it just killed me, to first see Corteo lose it and go off the deep end and kill Fango, but then for Avilio to have to kill Corteo. Man, just that stuck with me for days and days after watching it. And that's what I mean about this series pulling no punches. Another footnote, just to show you how crazy Fango was. Before Corteo could kill him, take him out of just his mind breaking, they had tried to get in the good graces of Fango, through Avilio's actions mostly. Nero was along for the ride and being led by the drawers in the same fashion as Corteo was by Avilio in trying to make this sort of partnership. But to gain his trust, they were going to take out the rival sort of syndicate leader, Orko, who is this fat, obtuse, grump, ornery cuss. He's like constantly wanting this lasagna to be made to perfection, and time again, the chef in the restaurant he owns is not able to make it the way he wants it, and he's like, I'm going to slaughter you if you don't do this the right way. And it's banging a dead horse on the creation of this lasagna. So to really just emphasize how psycho Fango is, when they take Orko out, he treats all of his sort of long-standing syndicate members who are still there to a wonderful lasagna dinner. And who is the chief guest, you might ask, at the table? Well, Orko himself. How can that be if he's been murdered, if he's dead? Well, he is the lasagna. And I'll leave it there. That was another, like, jaw-dropping moment. They are eating and enjoying this lasagna. Orko is gone. Fango has taken over. And he basically lets the bomb drop. You're eating your boss. Hope you enjoy. And so that was insane. And very much, as we ramp up to the end of this series, Avilio manages to manipulate everything, taking out the Galashia's sort of chief, leader, and creating an all-out war. I mean, it goes full on Bonnie and Clyde with the Tommy guns, the automatic weapons, the machine guns, and everything. Everyone is getting gunned down in the finale. And Nero finally catches up with Avilio. He kidnaps him for all intents and purposes. And again, talking about how closely it seems to feel and vibe and look and resemblance to Road to Perdition, they stop off at this diner. Basically Nero has a meal, and he's trying to decide what he's going to do with Avilio. Should he kill him? Should he let him survive? He needs to understand why Avilio, at the last second, when all hell broke loose, when the cards came crashing down, when Nero's own father, the leader of the Venetti family, perished, and this war broke out between the Venettis and the Galashias, he needs to understand what made Avilio hesitate to take Nero's life, his own life. And this is the overhanging question as we see them basically driving to the beach, sort of a cross-state or cross-country or whatever it is, this car ride where they're largely silent. It's almost like all of that growth that Avilio put into gaining the confidence of Nero, it comes to the fore again, even though they are opposing and adversarial at this point. There's still a kinship and a fondness that plays out between them. And finally, when they reach the beach, Avilio confesses why he couldn't kill Nero. It's not that he couldn't, it's that he didn't want to. For lack of a familial tie of any sense, with his family having been killed so many years ago, with having to take the life of Corteo, his nearest and dearest, the closest he could basically come to having a family, as he lived and breathed in lawless in this world. The next best thing was the relationship that he forged between himself and Nero. So he couldn't kill him. He didn't want to kill him. They're brothers, of a sort. And I like very much that, in a sense, the series is left ambiguous how it ends. Because Nero draws a gun as Avilio is walking away, and you hear the gunshot ring out, but you never see whether or not he took Avilio's life. Rather, do you see him driving away from the beachhead and smiling, probably fondly remembering all of the time they spent together. But what does that mean? What does that spell out for what happened between them both when he drew the gun on Avilio on the beach? It's left to the viewer largely to assume and speculate and fantasize. Did he let him go? Did he fire that shot up into the air? Was he smiling because he had finally succeeded in sating himself, something he failed to do so many years ago? It was Nero who was unable to take Avilio's life when he escaped, when his family was murdered. And so there's a level of innocence along those lines for Nero, but of course Nero is not a good man. He's a very bad man. He's part of a mafia syndicate. He's taken lives. Very similarly to Avilio, neither one of these characters are sort of, savable for all of the hell they've unleashed on the world, for all of the murder and the death and the vengeance and the seeking of power and whatever. I mean, they're very cut from similar cloth, and that's why they're so closely relatable, and that's why it's such an intriguing question that is only further pushed into that sort of, speculative aura with the final shots as the closing credits play of their footprints in the sand on the beach being washed away by so much ocean waves. And it's as though the journey is complete. The past is now sated. The losses have been answered. And the future, whatever lies on the horizon, whether in death or in life, is its new own thing now. No longer do they need to rest on the haunches of what came before. And I like to fondly speculate from my own perspective that Nero would have let Avilio live for the same reason Avilio couldn't kill Nero. But you never know. And I like that it is up in the air by the end. And again, just overall, talking about the series in a very overview format, so many twists and turns, so many punches to the gut and to the jaw in twist and turning storytelling, characterization, and really, drawing you in to the plight of Avilio, but drawing you in also to the surrounding characters, so you could see how it would become so hard for him to see it all to a close by the end. With the death of Nero, this cat who became like a brother in arms in a sense, even though they were so antagonistic and opposing, and for all intents and purposes, Avilio felt he was chiefly responsible when they first met. For him to grow a fondness to the point where he wouldn't want to kill him is amazing, and is as astounding as all of those twists and turns I've talked about. I've pinpointed the sort of hallmarks of the series that left me gaping time and time again, like, WTF, wow, they really went there. And the only other sort of high praise I can give the series, beyond what I've already said, is I really loved the OP, as performed by TK from, I'm probably going to mangle this, but Ling Tosai Sigore, or whatever it is. This OP, I loved hearing it. It's one of the rare cases where I wouldn't skip the OP whenever I would watch an episode. Sometimes I would skip Shokugeki no Soma, I wouldn't skip it, and this series I wouldn't skip it. Just loved it, but I'm glad I had the experience of watching it to its fruition, to its culmination. And otherwise, that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.